Welcome to the Seeds of Light, everyone. This is our show dedicated to illuminating the path of parenting using the power of astrology. Today, I'm here with Dominique Jaramillo, astrologer of over 14 years, facilitator of the Conscious Parenting with Astrology group, and mama to a 9-year-old boy. And we're here answering a real-life parenting question from our community. Thank you so much for being here with me, Dominique.
My pleasure, as always.
So here we go. I'm considering homeschooling. Can the chart tell me if that's a good idea for my child?
Okay, this is a big one. The short answer, yes and no. Yes, absolutely. The astrology gives us a great gateway into so many things, especially about schooling for our children. I know that's a big topic right now. I personally am not an authority on homeschool, and I don't do homeschool per se. But I do believe that all forms of alternative school can be really, really great at supporting our child's unique learning style. So I'm an advocate of it. I think it's great. I also believe it doesn't work for everyone's life. So there are things you have to consider, obviously, whether homeschooling works for you. I think with distance learning this last year, all of us parents have had a chance to get a little taste of that, whether we wanted to or not, and learn a lot about our kids. I've talked to parents in my group about this, and a lot more parents are considering homeschool. A lot of them really learned a lot about their children and how they learned through this last year. My son in particular, I know his temperament and he's kind of like easily distractible. But having the one-on-one focus with me and other kids not around necessarily, he's done better. But the social emotional thing is not as easy. And I know myself. And as much as I think I could do it, it's not necessarily conducive for me, right, in my home. So I do think that there are things to consider personally. And if your child's old enough, I think you could ask them. I mean, honestly, I actually asked my son after having a year of this situation if he liked it and if he would want to be homeschooled. And he said no. He said no. He wanted to go to school.
Dominique, those are such great points. I mean, it is such a pertinent topic right now because, as you said, we have been at home with our children. And what I've seen happen too is some parents have actually realize that it works way better for them. But also that some parents are just questioning the entire education system and realizing that they can do something different.
Yes.
And so I love that your answer is nuanced because yes, the chart can show us a lot of insights, and I want to go there next. And also that it's also kind of a personal decision about does it actually work for your lifestyle and these additional considerations.
Yes. And the thing that is inspiring to me and hopeful about this really difficult year we've all had is the changes that it is forcing the educational system to do and to look at. I think this whole situation will change even the public education system, which will be great. Because like I said, it doesn't work for everybody homeschooling, or they don't have the money to do a Waldorf or a Montessori or whatever. You want to improve the schooling that kids actually can go to. So I am hopeful that this is actually creating some innovative ways to actually improve schooling overall and education systems overall. That's my hope, from all of us being thrown into this tailspin, and teachers and students and school systems as well, for sure.
Me too. And I think as astrologers, we have seen that there's some signs pointing that we might actually be heading in that direction. So I feel hopeful.
Yeah.
So back to the question of what can the chart show me about whether I should homeschool my child or not? Where would we look for an answer to that?
Okay, so I would the thing that jumps out to me first, obviously, is the planet that rules thinking, reasoning, learning, and that's Mercury, right? So that's the planet that that rules how we think, how we process information, how we reason, and how we speak and, assimilate things that we learn. And so where the Mercury is or the element that it's in can give you a lot of understanding initially about how a child does that. Do they absorb it with a water Mercury? And then and it is not really in a linear fashion. Do they not learn in a linear fashion? Or are they, really high spirited with a fire and really excited and ambitious, but they can't sort of sit still in order to like do what they need to do in a school, right? Whereas those air signs, maybe they really are adaptable to learning and just are voracious readers and curious, and they can really go dive deep, or they can be like all over the place, right? And then Earth, slow and steady. They may need more time than most kids, and they don't always have it in a classroom because they're always moving you on to the next thing, right? So just generally, even the elements can give you a little bit of insight about how your child learns and and you can observe this in your child, how they communicate with you, how do they express themselves and how do they learn? And then you can also get a little bit more nuanced in terms of where that Mercury sits in the natal chart. The third house of the natal chart rules early childhood learning, and the fourth house rules home. So the natural sign that rules the third house is Gemini, and the Cancer is on the fourth house that rules home and family. So if you have a Gemini child or a Cancer child, perhaps they may lean towards that. Or if their Mercury is in one of those two houses, the third or the fourth, they may also be conducive to learning at home and feeling really good about learning at home. But I do believe that those are like some real easy, simple ways, a Mercury in Cancer might be really comfortable working and learning from home. Especially Cancer, or a Capricorn Mercury in the fourth, or so it really, those houses I think jump out at me as a place where that foundational home and early childhood learning can really be supported by something more unique or home based, if that makes sense. But I do think at the same time, I'll say that since I don't homeschool per se, that having this information about your child still gives you like immense information to help you with their teacher. So for example, if they're home doing homework, it still gives you a lot of insight into how to help your child with their work when they're home, when they're home from school doing their homework and stuff, and knowing how your child, is learns. And then also, we all know that schooling starts from home, learning starts from home anyway, starts with you, the parent, and that relationship you have with the teacher, being able to have this information and be able to communicate with the teacher, not necessarily in the language of astrology, but from what you know of it, what your child might need in the classroom to better support their learning. So having that information is going to be helpful to you regardless of the format that or the schooling, that you choose.
Right. Of course. It's amazing how nuanced the simplest answers can be, but how many different places we can apply that same information about our child. So my question would be, where does the parent's chart come in? How do you know if it's right for you as a parent?
Excellent question. So yeah, always with conscious parenting, I always tell my group and remind them all the time, because we're always trying to look at our kids' chart, that it starts with us. You really have to know your own chart first and know yourself first. And our children are part of our teachers, right? So you have to know if that works for you. Knowing your own Mercury, knowing how that might relate to your child's Mercury, your sun, So I have an air Mercury. I might be a great teacher, right? However, my son's Mercury is in Pisces, and I know that those two things don't really go together. And I've already witnessed at home the struggle I have to sort of help him. And I've learned what I need to do to adjust. But I feel like it can adversely sort of impact our relationship, our parent-child relationship, if I try to be something that that doesn't allow me to continue to nurture. Like it's playing a different role. And if that child's conducive to that, you playing that role, if that makes sense, And we know that children, when they get out in the world, oftentimes they behave totally differently with other people, and especially teachers or authority figures, different than they do with mom or mom and dad. Moms tend to get the brunt of it, right? So I like the idea of being his support as opposed to like the lead role.
Mm-hmm.
so that I can really I've had some great teachers that he's had some great teachers that I've been able to have some great conversations with. Some I've even introduced him a little to the astrology. Others I haven't, but I still talk to them about Joseph, and the thing that I know about Joseph, I find whenever the teacher sends feedback about him, I'm like, oh yeah, totally validates, his chart too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for a parent, you have to really know, I think, your own Mercury, if being a teacher works for you, if you want to take that on in your home, if you're energetically and have the right temperament for that. I mean, teachers are angels, and it's about temperament. And I know I don't have the right temperament to be a teacher. I know that about myself. And temperament's another thing we can get into, because you can really understand the child's temperament and your own temperament as well. You're born with your temperament, and it's different than the personality that you develop. So you have to know your own temperament, and if it's something that works for you.
Yeah, I'd love to do an episode on that. So Dominique, I would love to add just my own personal reflection. I've had a little bit of a journey with the homeschooling avenue, where this year I did feel that it was maybe time to switch to a totally different model. And I was like you, where I felt like, I don't think that my child really benefits from me being his only teacher, and I don't think that I am the right teacher for him. So I uncovered, that homeschooling can actually look in another way than what I had traditionally thought of homeschooling as. And I uncovered the idea of the homeschool co-op, which feels so relevant right now because, of course, we're in this very Aquarian energy that's all about community and revolutionizing how we're doing things and our friendships. And so it really feels like coming together in a co-op and doing the education differently, even at like a bigger, non-specific chart question, just what's happening in the cosmos for all of us could affirm that, yes, right now might be a great time to look into a homeschool co-op without knowing anything about your child's chart.
Yeah.
So let's see, what was my question about that?
Well, my neighbors are actually, they homeschool. She has 4 children and they homeschool, but she also is in like a homeschool group and kind of like a co-op situation like that. She's still like a primary, teacher to them, but they go, to this group. And I think that's a great idea. And for example, like that is something that you can look at if your child, like my son has his Mercury in the 11th, right? Which is friends and groups and stuff. So he actually might do really well in a situation like that, because he's got his friends, he's learning together, you know what I mean? So you can still see that. But I do think that, again, it still puts a different pressure on the parent and a different, you're still in charge in a different way than you are, just sending them to school and then, kind of being in contact there, knowing what they're doing, what they're working on. Being an involved parent while they're in school is one thing. Being involved in a co-op, it's a much more like whole engagement, but I think it's very Aquarian. I think it's ideal communities coming together to raise their children together. It's very Aquarian. And I do see a lot more of that happening. I'm sure there are a lot of families who have decided they don't want to go back to traditional school and totally understand it. And so I think we're going to see more of that type of thing, evolve. And, the whole testing system is changing. Like, nobody wants state testing. Like we can get a whole thing of there, but that's another thing that you take away that pressure, when you're in these more, unconventional, unique, types of education programs, I kind of think that my son, I think someone told me this once too, that he would do really well in like a Waldorf school. And I know that Amanda's children had gone to one. And I thought, I'd love to do that. There's not really one here. And it's like, we can't afford it, So I do what I can with what I know, you know what I mean? And what can work for my family. So, and I can't feel guilty that I can't provide that. I have to just do what I can do,
Of course. There's so many different factors to work with.
Right.
Dominique, do you have any closing tips or thoughts?
Well, I would simply say have an open mind about this. Make it a family decision. If your children are old enough, allow them to be part of that decision. I think that's important, especially if they're school aged. Trust your child's intuition about what they want to do. And, the parent makes that decision of what they think is best, but often, letting that child be part of the process. Mm-hmm. And if you want to dive more into learning your child's, your learning style, there are a lot of great resources and books to do that. The Way They Learn is a great book, and it has nothing to do with astrology, but has tests in there and stuff to help you understand. And I had read an article about how you can use the understanding of the Mercury and the sun to find that too. I think astrology for parents to know, I think, is a great shortcut to answering some really, great questions or getting some really key guidance in how you can answer that question. So I always see it as a great, quick way in to really get to the core of our little beings and ourself, how we can make these decisions. So I always see astrology as a valuable tool in this question, and of course, every other.
Thank you so much, Dominique. For those of you that would love to know more about Dominique and her path and learn more from her, we actually did a full episode with Dominique just a few weeks ago on the Seeds of Light show. You'll be able to find a link to that episode in the show notes. And please make sure to download your Working with Your Child's Moon Sign guide. It's totally free, and it'll help you get additional insight into helping nurture your child and guide them through their childhood in a way that is tailored specifically to their nature. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you soon.